Hi, this is Virginia Wood, and I'm going to be discussing Chapter 10 from Dr. Valerie Ping's book, Diversity and Equity in the Classroom. This chapter is on language development and acquisition. Before I begin, I just want to say it is important for teachers to understand how to implement language acquisition with English language learner students, as cognitive, writing, and higher order thinking skills have many direct links to language development. In this presentation, I'm going to cover three areas of language development. First, I'll discuss how people develop language skills. Then I'll move into phases of language acquisition specifically for English language learners before I cover a variety of second language acquisition models and strategies. First, to gain a little bit of social context about English language learners. English language learners in the context of this text are defined as students ages 6 to 18 with a home language other than English. In the US, 71% of ELLs have a home language of Spanish. Half of the top 10 home languages of students are not Latin-based language. This can make it more difficult to transfer some home language skills to the learning of English, although, as you will hear later, these students do have some prior knowledge that we can build on when developing English skills. Students will speak different home languages depending on what state or community you live in, which is why it is so important to implement the CRT strategies we have already learned and really get to know your students. It is possible they will speak a language that you know nothing about, including its country of origin. Dr. Pang makes this point by asking us if we know where the languages of Cushitic, Ilocano, and Yupik originate. In my community, we have a very large Hmong population. Having moved to California from the Midwest, I had no idea where the Hmong language or people originated. I had to undertake a bit of research and now enjoy discussing and making Hmong story cloths with students. In addition to learning about the country of origin, it is important to affirm students' identities by learning a few key phrases in their home language, such as welcome and how are you. Now I'll discuss early language skills from birth to 1 year old. As we grow, we have many skills to learn simultaneously and quickly. We must develop social understanding so that we can communicate verbally and through body language with others. As babies, we face the difficult task of trying to make meaning from the sounds we hear. One way we attempt to do this is through making babbling sounds ourselves. As we become phonemically aware, we try to manipulate individual sounds or phonemes in spoken words. As babies, we can grow our language as we are exposed to approximately 16,000 different examples of language as our parents read to us, play games, sing, etc. It is important to note that different languages acquire different sounds at different times, and that different languages have different phonemes. For example, English speakers first focus on consonant sounds, while Spanish speakers notice vowels first. While we are busy putting these sounds together, we are also picking up on their meaning and context and developing our vocabulary. As we grapple with the meanings of words, we learn to pronounce words, use them in context, and put them in grammatically correct sentences. We are developing our lexicon skills. By the time we are a year old, we learn word order and grammar as we learn to make sentences. Knowing the system of how to correctly use words within a sentence is syntax. As we become young children, we gain skill in morphology and can see that different parts of words have meaning and begin to use those smaller parts of words elsewhere in our oral language. An example would be adding the er or ing ending to words. These steps occur regardless of the home language spoken. In our early education, we learn pragmatics, or in what context words and sentences are used, through inferring. Because we learn to be pragmatic through clues in our environment, the culture we are raised in matters. Due to needing a cultural reference, pragmatics can be difficult for English language learners. For example, they may not understand that "I need to catch the bus" actually means "I'm going to be late" and may take this literally. As we approach 4 years old, we develop metalinguist awareness as we learn underlying principles and rules of our home language. We make the connections that rhyming words rhyme at the ends of words, and words may sound the same but hold different meanings. Tone is an important part of this developmental stage, as some language assigns meaning to words spelled the same by changing their tone. For example, Vietnamese is a tonal language. The word ma could mean ghost or cheek depending upon tone. For this reason, students with tonal home languages may look for phonological patterns that are not there. We can help students by making connections that do exist to their home languages. There are 5 stages of second language acquisition development in this model. The first one is Pre-production stage. In this stage, the student uses nonverbal communications, listens very carefully, and follows the actions of peers. In the second stage, early production, single word answers are used, limited verbal language is in use, and students are able to use language to participate in classroom routines. In the third stage, speech emergence, students create simple, often grammatically correct sentences, control their pronunciations and level of voice in different situations, and can sound out words and read picture books. As they move into the fourth stage of intermediate fluency, they'll be comfortable and confident with conversation, self-correct syntax, and be able to understand most vocabulary and abstract core content. And finally, in their fifth stage of advanced fluency, they understand abstract vocabulary and content as if they were a native speaker. It can take 4 to 10 years to develop advanced fluency. Dr. Peng provides a table with multiple teaching strategies for each stage on page 315 of our text. I highly encourage you to look at it. There are too many examples to include here, but in general, modeling, use of realia, and photos or other visuals are strong strategies for ELLs. When students come to school, they may feel intimidated and afraid that they will be made fun of for poor pronunciation. Since they do not understand the language of instruction, they may not know what to do. They also face having to learn social context, the culture, nonverbal cues, and academic language. All of this can be overwhelming. The student's anxiety and low self-esteem hinders their language acquisition. When students have to deal with poor peer and teacher attitudes, they report spending more time in the bathroom and doing tasks such as coloring. To counter this, we can implement Stephen Krashen's affective filter hypothesis. That is that with positive encouragement, self-esteem increases while anxiety decreases, and the student can focus on learning and not cognitive social situations or mistakes made in language use. We can implement a caring and trusting classroom. Now that we have an important understanding of how we gain knowledge in our earliest years and understand the stages that ELLs move through, I will move to various models and strategies for how to teach ELLs English. When we ask students to do disjointed activities with no meaning, that is to sit and quote unquote learn, we are utilizing an ineffective strategy because it is content with no context. It would be much more powerful for the student to hold the real object or see a picture to make a connection with the word being learned. Krashen calls this difference between acquiring language and learning language the acquisition learning hypothesis. The language input must be meaningful to the learner. This is the basis for the input hypothesis theory. For example, a student is more likely to acquire new vocabulary that is needed to get to school on the bus rather than doing a worksheet in class. For this reason, it is important that we provide time and allow students to read materials of their choosing to develop multiple reading skills such as comprehension, decoding, and sight words. Simply put, if we want students to learn to read, we must let them read voluntarily. In the natural order hypothesis, the teacher allows the students to first respond with one-word answers, asking simple questions, and later, as the second language abilities of a person develop, the individuals can answer questions which are more complex and require more complex answers and advanced literacy skills. There is a great difference in language level when discussing the mastery of conversational English versus academic language. When we refer to a student's conversation speaking skills, we call it BICS. This is an easier language acquisition as words are easy and used in everyday conversation, and the student is learning in context with meaningful conversations with friends. BICS is also known as Basic Interpersonal Communication Skills. It takes a student approximately 2 years to develop BICS. On the other hand, students must learn academic language, vocabulary, conceptual language, and academic writing in school, which is challenging for native speakers and especially for ELLs. It is imperative that these skills are explicitly taught in school as they are paramount for students' career and college success. We call these skills CALP, or Cognitive Academic Language Proficiency. It takes 5 to 7 years to develop these skills. Students need both skill sets to be successful. As we teach these skills, it is important to know that some languages are linear and logical, while others may be circular and expressive. Knowing this, we can model the order, formatting, grammar, and pragmatic conventions needed to be successful in our classes and allow students opportunities to participate and practice their English and writing skills before turning in final assignments. Another strategy is to partner ELLs with native speakers to complete a specific task. We can also build on prior knowledge and use simple sentence structure as opposed to more complex structures. It is important we not use metaphor or phrases specific to the dominant culture that students may not understand when delivering content or instruction. Sheltered English and Sudai approaches are teaching the methods that teach both subject area content and language skills in an English-only classroom. Supports are used such as building on content, vocabulary, and knowledge already known. These approaches to instruction are based on the beliefs that the second language is best learned when it is centered around the content that has meaning for the student. CALA, or Cognitive Academic Language Approach, focuses on the core content and higher order thinking, such as metacognitive strategies, while developing language skills. It is a strategy that many believe should only be used in intermediate or advanced fluency students, while others say it makes content accessible to all stages of development. When students learn in their home language prior to being schooled in English, they have already acquired the language skills of syntax, vocabulary, discourse, and pragmatics. These skills can be transferred to their schooling in English, building on what they already know. This is one reason it is recommended that ELLs be enrolled in a bilingual school early in their academic career. When students are allowed to maintain their home language in a bilingual classroom, they have time to master core content their peers are learning in English-only classrooms. This also allows them to gain good understanding of the home language, which has been shown to improve learning English. The goal of teaching students in home language and English is biliteracy, to read and write in two languages. So now I'll go over the 3 bilingual programs covered in the text. First is transitional bilingual education. The primary goal is to assimilate students into American society and to teach them English. Early exit refers to situations in which students have instruction for a maximum of 2 years. They use their home language for the first year part-time, and English is used for the other portion. Cultural relevancy is an important aspect of this approach. The teacher is a cultural mediator and usually has some ties to the native language community. While the benefit is that the student can learn 40% of the time in their home language until 6th grade, the drawback is that the curriculum may center on conversational language only and not on academic language, because 2 years is just not long enough for ELLs to develop these complex cognition and conceptual skills. The next one is MBE, which stands for Maintenance Bilingual Education Programs. 2 cultures, 2 languages, and 2 viewpoints are maintained and developed while students focus on developing their ethnic and linguistic identity. Bilingualism is seen as an important benefit and skill of this program. The goal is to help students become fully proficient in both languages. However, students in these programs often need extra assistance with academic concepts and terms. And finally, dual language programs. The goal of dual language programs is to teach students so that they are skilled and able to function well in 2 languages. In these programs, language brings agency and self-identification. Both English learners and native speakers of English are members of the program. Fluent Spanish speakers work with fluent English speakers to gain language skills. Bilingualism and biliteracy are major goals of this program. In dual language programs, both cultures and languages of students are affirmed and used in instruction. There are other language programs that are not considered bilingual programs as they support both native and second languages. The first one would be submersion programs, where students who do not speak English are placed in all English-speaking classroom and expected to learn English while they learn grade-level academic content. This approach is often called the sink or swim method since the home heritage language is not used at all. And the final one is ESL, or English as a Second Language, where students are pulled out of programs and spend 20 to 30 minutes per day or week working with a teacher. There are many downsides to this program, as ESL teachers' curriculum does not match the general ed curriculum, so students get further behind. Students have a limited amount of English instruction, which is out of context to students' cultures, and their cultures are not affirmed, and students feel stigma or believe they are not smart when they're pulled out. This chapter also covered a brief conversation of African American English, or Ebonics, as quote unquote a legitimate rule-based systemic language that is primary language of many African American children. Thank you for listening. I hope that you enjoyed and learned a lot.